Hi guys, welcome back. It is the final week of the Every Bit Counts challenge, and if I'm honest, I am tired. This is my second full year of homesteading if you're new here, and I'm learning that August is crazy. The garden is at max productivity right now, which is not a bad problem to have at all, but it does mean that there's a lot of harvesting and preserving to do while still keeping up with, other daily tasks. So I'm tired, but this is not the time to let up yet. I am going to push through this week, and I think things are slowing down soon. I already am feeling a fall chill in the air. It happened early this year. Today I'm freezing peaches for smoothies. We have found that leaving the skin on saves us a lot of time, and we just don't notice the difference when it's popped into a smoothie. So peaches need to be flash frozen. They get frozen in a single layer, and then after several hours of being frozen solid, or in my case 2 days because I forgot, then they're ready to go into a bag, and that way they won't all stick together. If they go straight into the bag, you just end up with one frozen mass. On Monday, I am finally ready to deal with my onions. These have been curing in the garage for weeks now. I typically braid them after they've cured for about a week. Ideally, the stems should still have some green in them and some brown. They've dried out, but they're not completely brittle. That allows them to be flexible enough to be braided. I love the look of a hanging onion braid. I just want that hanging up in my kitchen, and I pull from it whenever I need. However, these stems have dried out for several weeks. They're probably too brittle for a braid, but I just had to give it a try. I'm cutting the roots off of the bottom of each bulb and then just brushing off any dirt or any paper skin that might just fall right off. Then it's time for braiding. This process is a lot like French braiding. You just bring in a new onion every time you would have grabbed a new piece of hair. So I use some string to reinforce the onion stems. I start with 3 strings and 3 onions and braid those and then work in more onions as I cross over. However, these stems were really brittle. My fears were confirmed, and as I walked over to proudly show you my braid, you can't see it here, but one of the onions fell right out. This is not working. I'm going to need to change my tactic this year. So instead of a braid, I'm going to cut the tops off and just store these in bins. I'm leaving about 1 inch at the top of each one. You don't want to cut them too close because that can also hurt storage life. I grew 3 kinds of onions this year: a sweet white Spanish onion, which is short-term storage onion, and then Patterson, that's the yellow one you just saw. That's better for long-term storage, I'm told. This is my first year growing it. And then also red onions, and I have just been thinking about making pickled red onions with these red onions for months now as I watch them grow. I didn't have a very large onion crop this year. Well, the onions themselves aren't that large, so I definitely want to do some more reading and learning and work towards larger onions next year. I also dealt with the allium leaf miner for the first time this year, which I know can be so destructive. It didn't hit me super hard, but I know that if I had it this year, I could have it worse next year, so I'll probably be covering my onions and my garlic from now on. Time for pickled red onions. I am slicing these as thin as possible right now. This is a good job for a mandolin if you have one. I haven't bought one yet, so I'm just going to do this by hand. I cut 2 onions for this project. They were my larger onions, so 2 normal size onions would be about right. They're going into a quart-sized jar. They could also go into 2 pint-sized jars, and then it's time to make the brine. To the saucepan, I'm adding 2 cups of water, 2 cups of white vinegar, a 1/3 cup of sugar, and 2 tablespoons salt. that's it. And I'll put this recipe in the description for you. I'm just heating and stirring until the salt and sugar are dissolved. Then they're ready to be poured over the onions, and in a few hours the onions become pickled. I found that they reached their best point by the next morning. That was when they were fully infused with the brine. They looked so pretty. On Tuesday, I made golden beet soup to freeze and eat throughout the winter. I grow golden beets just because I like making golden beet soup. And so I had a few left in the garden, but I've also been saving several in the fridge. Beets keep pretty well in the fridge, so they've been in there for a couple weeks, waiting to be made into a big batch of this soup. Peeling and chopping the beets is definitely the most time-consuming part of this whole recipe. So I'm just cutting the tops and the bottoms off of each beet here, and then I'm using my vegetable peeler. Fortunately, with golden beets, you don't end up with that enormous mess that red beets make. We have some more red beets to process next week, but for now, I don't have to worry about staining everything red. The beets are coated in olive oil and then sprinkled with salt, and they go into the oven to roast. I'm making a triple batch here. I'll put the recipe down below, and I'll also mention that the recipe calls for 2 apples in a batch. I want to work with what I have on hand. I don't want to buy something for this. So I'm skipping the apples, and I swapped into beets for the apples. So 5 beets per batch, 15 beets in all for my triple batch. I've made this soup several times before, but this is the first time that all the veggies came from my garden. It's my own beets, onions, garlic, carrots, and celery. And that feels pretty good. It feels like progress. I love that point in a cooking process where everything's chopped and I get to just actually cook. If I win the lottery someday, I will hire a personal sous chef. The cooking part is definitely my favorite. The onions and garlic are cooked in some fat. I'm using ghee. Butter would also be a great option, or olive oil. And once they're softened, then the carrots and celery get cooked as well. I know that this pot is not big enough for a triple batch of soup, but my largest pot is my canning pot, and that's not great for simmering these veggies. I need something with a thicker bottom. So this 2-pot system has worked well for me before. I'll cook these first in the pot and then transition them into my larger one for soup. I'm adding 3 quarts of chicken broth. I used to freeze all of my chicken broth just because it's easy to put something into a freezer container, but I recently switched to canning my broth, and it is such a game changer. It's really nice to be able to make soup without having to think ahead far enough to thaw something, so that is the way from now on. By the way, look how gelatinous some of this broth is. I recently got some chicken feet and it really makes a difference. That broth is super gelatinous, and I know there's lots of good collagen in it for us. Finally, I'm adding some smoked paprika and salt. Then this just needs to simmer for about 10 minutes until everything's soft.
What? Is that what you're saying? June Boone.
Right?
It does look very beautiful.
Look on the inside, there's light blue.
Yeah, there's really pretty dots on the inside.
Today, it's time for another batch of salsa. I brought you along for making salsa 2 weeks ago, but I've been making it every week and I've been waiting for my habaneros to ripen so that I can make a hotter batch. I also have some shishito peppers that I've been waiting on to just fruit, and now I've got a couple shishitos. These plants are looking sad, I know. They were kind of the last pick from the greenhouse at the end of the season, but I'm getting a little bit from them. I'll take what I can get. I start my salsa with the same base every time. That's 8 pounds of tomatoes, cored and halved. They're put on a tray skin side up, and then 2 onions halved, and several garlic cloves left in the skins. From there, I vary things a bit based on the heat level I want, because the peppers are where it gets more creative. Today I'm using poblanos, ají mango, jalapeno, habanero, and shishito. I've never done this many different types of peppers, but I really like the flavor of each of these, and I'm hoping to finally achieve a decently hot batch. I'm having the peppers and placing them skin side up on the tray. I'm not taking the time to remove a lot of the seeds. Because I'm going for heat, I don't mind the seeds being in there, and it just makes my life easier not pulling them all out. I've had the broiler preheating on high, and the oven rack goes into the highest position. I want these right up under the flame of the broiler. I want the skins to get charred. So I put them in for 10 minutes. Everybody's oven's a little bit different, but I watch for most of the skins to have some black charring on them. After that time under the broiler, the tomato skins just lift right off. It's effortless. I'm using a slotted spoon to move these into the blender because I want to make sure to leave those juices behind. I want that water out of my salsa. I'm also going to drain everything in the blender, just holding in the tomatoes with a spoon and letting all that water come out. When the tray with the garlic cloves is ready to go into the blender, I just have to make sure to take those cloves out of their skins. When they've been broiled for a bit, they just slip right out and the garlic inside is sort of roasted. A bunch of cilantro is added to the last blender batch, and then everything is combined. Then it's time for the final seasonings. I'm adding 2 tablespoons of salt, 1 tablespoon of cumin, and the juice of a lime. Let's see if I manage to make a batch that's hot. Every time I think I've done it, it's mild. That is an uncomfortable heat level for me. I'm not in pain. Let me see what John thinks. Hey, John! This was just the right heat level for him. This will go into containers and into the freezer, and I think that brings our tally to about 12 containers in the freezer, which will last us a few months. Friday, I got a new tool for my kitchen that I've been wanting for a long time. I'm so excited. I got a food dehydrator. It was time. I actually had planned to get one from the Facebook Marketplace the day before, and it was just one of those worst case scenarios where I drove an hour with both kids to meet someone at a gas station and waited for an hour and they never showed, and I was so annoyed by the time I got home that I just went on Amazon and ordered the dehydrator I really wanted. Plan B wasn't quite as thrifty as Plan A, but I did end up with a really good dehydrator. It's stainless steel, so I know it will last a long time. It's something that I feel good about adding to my kitchen, so this is a gift and I'm grateful to have it. I've been wanting to make sun-dried tomatoes for several months now. I actually planted a cherry tomato plant, Principe Borghese. I hope I'm saying the name correctly, very Italian, because it was advertised as being good for sun-dried tomatoes. So I thought that'd be the perfect way to break in my dehydrator. The tomatoes are halved, tossed in olive oil and salt, and then placed cut side up on the tray. They go into the dehydrator at a temp of 140, and then it's time to wait. It's impossible to name an exact time because tomatoes vary so much in their moisture, but this took me 12 hours. I checked on it a couple times and found that there was still a bit of moisture left in some of the tomatoes. I would touch them and find that there was moisture left behind on my finger, and so they're supposed to feel completely dry, like there isn't moisture left behind when you touch them. At last, I reached the point where every tomato was completely dried out, and so it was time to put it into a jar for storage. I will soak these in olive oil to rehydrate them when I'm ready to use them while cooking. I'm dreaming of a sun-dried tomato cream sauce over pasta at some point. Until then, it's good to have these stored away, and it's really good to have another tool for food preservation in my kitchen. If you've got favorite food dehydrator recipes, please send them my way, and I'd love to know what you're working on right now, what you're preserving in your kitchen. I know I've been sharing a lot of kitchen projects with you lately. Next week we'll be back in the garden. I look forward to sharing more with you then. Bye.